This is the 21st show. I'm Brian Mackey, and we are continuing our program on the Illinois General Assembly's legislative session that ended early yesterday morning, Wednesday morning in Springfield. Before the break, we heard from Speaker of the Illinois House, Chris Welch. The legislation that makes up the state budget was a partisan effort, with only Democrats voting in favor. Republicans say it's going to create big money problems down the line, something Governor J.B. Pritzker pushed back on in his news conference after the vote.
Every year, particularly Republicans, say things like that. They say, oh, we're careening toward a brick wall. It hasn't happened. 6 years in a row, we have balanced this budget, and we have made sure that we're thinking about and lowering costs for working families every time we put a budget together. So, I'm pleased with how the budget ultimately came out. 6 years of balanced budgets for Illinois, that's a record.
Here to talk more about the Republican perspective on the legislative session and the budget-making process is the House Minority Leader, Toni McCombie. She's a Republican from Savannah in the northwest part of the state. Leader McCombie, welcome back to the 21st show.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
And listeners, as ever, you're welcome to join us at 800-222-9455. All right, I want to come back to process, but I want to put a pin in that for a moment. So from a policy standpoint, what is your top-line reaction to the actual substance of the budget that passed the Illinois House early yesterday morning?
Well, we have to pass a budget, so we did that. However, like you've heard, this is, and I say it every year, unfortunately, this is my eighth budget to have an opportunity to vote yes or no on, and this is the largest budget in history. I hope one year that I don't say that, but we have to pass the budget to have government work. So unfortunately, this one is obviously bloated, in my opinion, and many others. Republican and Democrats on both the House and the Senate. And it does have, I feel, too many political projects as well as too many tax increases and fees.
All right, let's get into some of those things. But I do want to talk about one of the things that's gotten a lot of attention this spring, and that is the eliminating the 1% tax on groceries. Governor Pritzker made this a priority in his budget address earlier this year. What do you think of that from a policy standpoint, now that it is eventually going to be coming to Illinois in 2026?
Yeah, so the grocery tax, I think any sort of tax reform is great. I wish we were looking at a tax reform on a larger scale. We have an estate tax. We have, when we're looking at income tax, I just think we need to look at it at a bigger scale. It's easy for the governor's administration to look at the grocery tax because it's not his tax. And it polls very, very well. I come from municipal government before getting into state government, and it's a funding source for our local government. So he's taking that away. But yet putting it back on the locals, to giving the locals the ability to tax the locals on that level. But here's the catch. And this is what will happen. And one of the reasons many of us in local government do run for office. Not only will we have the ability locally to raise that tax, but we also have the ability to raise it up to 2% because there's a different avenue, not just on grocery, but on general taxes. So it raises it even more. And what will happen is the locals will say, wait a minute, I thought we were getting our grocery tax removed. And then the mayors and the city councils will say, well, you were, but we had no choice because we have to fund your streets and your potholes, and we're already filling your garbage fees. You're not collecting enough for that, so we had to put it back on. So because of Governor Pritzker and your state rep and your state senators, they gave us no choice, so blame them. It's just going to be passing the buck again, and it's just not a real reform, which is unfortunate. But eventually Springfield will get the blame.
All right, let's get into the process of the budget making. One thing I've heard a lot from Republicans is that they were not invited to any budget making meetings. Can you speak to that? Is that your position or statement this year?
Well, it depends. It depends what you're considering budget meetings. We have appropriation meetings throughout the year. Those happen. They're not always very well attended, and they're an exercise, certainly looking at line items. Some work better than others, depending on the chair, the Dem chair. So those do happen. When you're looking at the actual budget meetings, do they happen between budgeteers, between Republicans and Democrats and the House and the Senate? Did they happen last year? Did they happen this year? No. What did happen is the governor has his budget address in February. The governor did invite the leaders of the House and the Senate, and he gives us his top lines before that. He has his address, and then our staffs also have kind of a little deeper dive into the governor's proposal. This year, I will say last Thursday, before the actual anything really happened, the governor had us being the leaders of the House and the Senate, as well as our chief of staffs, in his office to say, hey, these are, my budget is basically the same as what I proposed. Here are some changes and here are some additions. And to the four tops, as well as we had our people in there. And we're close to a deal and hope to have support from Republicans and Democrats. That happened. No paperwork. It was just a conversation. I think I was the only one that was taking notes, and I had a few questions. That happened, but no digging into the weeds with the budgeteers. No conversations between myself and the speaker. Now, that being said, Sunday morning, coming home from Springfield, when the House was adjourned, I did reach out to both the Senate President and the Speaker of the House. And after seeing the impact and seeing the 1% increase on the video gaming tax, the cap retailers discount, the net operating loss not being sunsetted, seeing all of these different taxes, which amounted in about $746 million. I called both of them on my way home from Springfield and said, is the cake baked? And they both of it felt that it was, but thanks for the call and we'll get back to you. And I didn't hear anything more from them.
So I guess, I'm sorry to interrupt you,
but a long way. So no. No.
Well, so yeah, I guess the point is, because we heard, and our listeners will have heard the House Speaker say, look, there were all these appropriations hearings, and as you pointed out, Republicans are certainly a part of those. But I guess what I'm hearing from you is, to borrow a line from Hamilton, you're not in the room where it happens, right? Where the real decisions are made.
Yeah, that's right. And we certainly want to be. We want to be. We're open to being, and we worked really hard. I worked really hard. Our leadership team worked really hard last year. And willing to do so this year as well. We're able to, there's priorities that we want in the budget as well, that, we represent parts of all 102 counties, and we have ideas, and sometimes those ideas are picked up from our Dem colleagues, and sometimes our Dem colleagues help us carry them across the finish line. I don't understand the process of what has happened over the years, but Speaker Welch and I both we're fairly new to this leadership, and he talks about it being a new day, so let's lead like it's a new day. And unfortunately, that hasn't happened over there, and it didn't have to be that way, and it doesn't have to be that way next year. But we'll see how it goes. It's his house to lead. It's his house to manage. Unfortunately, it's not done very well, but we're here to help, and I hope he asks for it.
What, I think that one of the things we heard from the speaker say is that he goes to Republicans leaders and says, will you put votes on the budget? And I'm not sure if that's sort of like it sounds to me like some sort of precondition. Can you speak to that? Is there any Democratic budget, given the state of the Republican Party, where and the state of the way the districts are drawn in Illinois, where many legislators are more concerned about an attack from their right in the primary if they're a Republican than the general election necessarily. Is there any way that you could see Republicans voting for a budget that would still get majority support among Democrats in Illinois?
Well, we didn't get that ask this year. We did get that ask last year. I think it was the second week of May. It was the last meeting I had with Speaker, and he asked for when I said, "Are we going to see the budget?" He asked for my leadership team, and I chuckled because I was like, "Well, I guess you don't want to see me or the leadership team in office again next year, you know." And so. That's not how it works. If you want to have votes and you are honestly asking for votes, you have to have some sort of transparency. Now, I'll be honest, I don't know that his caucus wants Republican votes on a budget or a big bill anyways. He has issues in his caucus too. I mean, he has a more left-leaning. He has chosen to draw a map to have a supermajority, and he's having to deal with that as well. So I don't know if his caucus really wants him to have Republican votes, and that's why when you ask the question, "Hey, do you want to put your leadership team on a budget that you haven't even seen?" He knows I'm not going to lie to him, so he knows I'm not going to say yes to a crazy question like that. Today, was there an environment where in a budget that we could have negotiated and put on, was there some members that were willing to negotiate and put some things on? Yeah, I think there was some things if they were in there, whether it be invest in kids, whether it be some road projects for their districts. Yeah, I think there was some things that could have helped.
Investing Kids is the private schools tax scholarship program that was allowed to sunset, and doesn't seem to be appetite on the Democratic side, at least enough appetite to revive that. I do want to talk about some of the other non-budgetary items. What were some of the top policy agenda items this spring among House Republicans? What did and did not happen with them?
Well, we have a lot of bills just overall that don't get called. I think that that would be one of the procedural asks on the percentage of the number of Republicans that we have in the House, and things that have been done in the past and how business was done. In 2019, there was a capital bill, and by percentage of the House, capital projects were sent out by our percentage, and that doesn't happen anymore. Votes don't get out. We've had some really good bills. I think of Amy Grant, Representative Grant out of Wheaton. She had a very common sense bill that just doesn't get called because of politics. And but this budget did have some great things in it, obviously, that we want funded, that are shared priorities when it comes to education, when it comes to the pension payment, when it comes to the rainy day fund, being, these are good things that are in here. But there's things in here that we just can't support. Again, another pay raise, and that's an issue for us, and it's an issue for Illinoisans around the state. Not having any reform for procurement and how our agencies are run. One of the things as representatives, we deal with constituents every day, and that's how to navigate government. And this is Republicans and Democrats. So we really could, and the governor could have a win just with agency mismanagement, and government is really gotten bloated, and it makes it hard for agencies to be more efficient and to really serve the public. I don't think anybody minds paying taxes if the government is working for them. And this is an area where it really is an issue, and we really need to dig into some structural reform.
We have talked before about rebuilding trust in institutions and government in Illinois. We had a program on this show a few weeks ago about Madison County, where voters are being asked in a referendum whether Cook County should be separated from the rest of Illinois. I know this has come up a few times over the year. I wonder, can you speak to one of the things we heard from a lawmaker, a county board member, I should say, down there is that, he and his constituents feel totally shut out of government. And I think I'm hearing a similar feeling from you today. Can you speak to that sort of sentiment in Illinois, even though people acknowledge it's not real, it's not actually going to pass, at least the people we talked to who supported it, that it's more symbolic, how it feeds into that notion, and what responsibility you may have for, tamping down on that sort of anger and frustration out there?
Yeah, I think having me, my colleagues, electing me as the House Minority Leader, I am, yeah, although I'm in the top northwest corner of the state, considered downstate. I think that's important, understanding the differences of where we live compared to the suburbs and in Chicago. It is very different. And I'm learning that even Northern Illinois is very different than Southern Illinois, and embracing those differences. And I understand the frustrations as well. But we really push our colleagues on the other side of the aisle that live in Chicago and the suburbs to visit our areas and to understand. I get it. I think during COVID, really, I think rural voters and rural families really understand that their voices did have impact, and on common sense things. We just want to be heard. And I think getting more involved in engagement is helping and working. And you're seeing that in on the political side with primaries. You're seeing that as well. I mean, people are upset, and they're upset with Chicago. They don't want to be forgotten. And that's why I always talk about, although we only have 40 in the House, we represent parts of all 102 counties. And even the governor notices when I say that. He mentioned that last Thursday. He made a point to say that to me. And he represents all 102 counties too. And it's important that we talk about that and make people understand. Just like the tax on the 1% for the video gaming.
Yep, and I'm afraid
Sorry.
I'm afraid we are out of time. Tony McCombie
Darn.
is the minority leader in the Illinois House of Representatives, a Republican from Savannah. Thank you for being with us today on the 21st
Thanks,
show.
Brian. Take care.
More to come after a break. Stay with us.